We are here today to talk about Always Be Composing, the flexible music system of Plants vs. Zombies Heroes. I am Becky Allen, audio director and composer at PopCap Games. And I worked on Plants vs. Zombies Heroes for the last 2 years. And you may say, what is Plants vs. Zombies Heroes? Oh, collectible card game. That's right. Who here has heard of it? Played it? Yay! All right. Thanks. So this is an interesting project. So I'm here to talk about the music design, the music systems, and the composition, and all of the different phases of iteration throughout the process. We'll start at the beginning. At the very beginning, I decided on a guiding principle: support gameplay and the player's experience. I met with the game designer, Devin Lowe, and talked about the music for the game. We'd already made a prototype of the game in Unity and with Wise, and put in some initial hooks, lots of hooks actually, utilizing old PVZ sounds. But we knew that this was going to be a new game in a new genre with CCG, but still in the PVZ franchise, PVZ universe. Also at that time, Hearthstone was very popular and still is very popular. Awesome game and awesome sounding game. So we were looking at that and seeing how that sounded, and music and sound design in that, and also looking back to other PVZ games. And I was thinking, how can I stretch out a little more here? I want to support the gameplay and the player's experience, maybe even more, with more interactivity, a little more responsiveness, move that needle a little further for this project. And meeting with the game designer, we talked initially about what was he envisioning for the music. And he said, well, I'd like there to be a progression, like a beginning, a middle, end. Yeah, some kind of development there, so that you feel the progression of the game. And also there would be heroes in this game, so whatever that would mean. So this is the early phase, and thinking about different music styles and influences. There was a lot of pressure early on from the team to make this sound very PVZ-1-ish, and even a little PVZ-2, because they wanted the players to come over from other PVZ games into PVZ Heroes. So I did listen to a lot of PVZ themes, especially PVZ-1 themes by Laura Shigehara. Of course, the wonderful PVZ-2 themes of Peter McConnell are fantastic as well. But I did sit down with Laura's music and analyze that. And so I sat in my studio and just kind of analyzed that in a traditional analytical way. And I was like, okay, mostly minor, lots of bass lines, incredible melodies, strong melodies. So I sat in my studio and I started writing and trying to write in that style, and finding what are the edges of that style. Oh, if I do this too much, it doesn't feel PVZ. If I go over there too much, it doesn't feel too PVZ, and finding where those edges are and still feeling PVZ. So I was doing that for a little while. Meanwhile, during this sort of explorational style phase, I was doing a lot of yoga in the morning at home, and my daughter was watching Powerpuffs in the background, and I would hear the music of the Powerpuffs, and I'd hear these little, little fragments, these little personal stingers and small phrases that were kind of in and out and really fast, but very identifiable. And I really liked that. And I thought, maybe that also could influence PVZ Heroes. So we had a gameplay prototype. And in order to really flesh out some of these ideas, I took a linear capture of that gameplay prototype and brought it into my DAW and started exploring with some themes and thinking about what the role of the music would be. I talked to Devin Lowe, again, our creative director, and asked him, what are the average number of hands, do you think, in this game? Well, I think probably about 8 hands would do. And how long do you think an average session length would be? He said, about 5 minutes. Okay. And then he said, there's also going to be these sections in the game where you play actively, and then a fight combat section where the game sort of plays for you and the cards are battling against each other. I'm like, okay. getting the ideas here. And he also said there will be 20 heroes, 10 plant heroes and 10 zombie heroes. So I started to explore, and this is an early prototype of the music where I'm exploring the hero themes. So this guy down here, Super Brains on the bottom, he's our zombie hero, and up at the top is Green Shadow, our plant hero. And you'll hear 3 different things in here. The zombie theme for Super Brains, and then the plant theme for Green Shadow, and the combat fight section. So 3 different things playing. Super Brains. Back to Super Brains. Green Shadow's coming in. Sometime. There she is. So during this proof of concept phase, I was trying to explore going back and forth between the heroes and also that combat music, because really at that stage, they didn't think that the combat or fight music needed to be different. And I thought, but we could do something. It could be fun. So along came a feature in the game called the phase indicator. And it was in the right-hand side of the screen, and it told the player what was happening. And it was, first it would say zombie turn, then plant turn, zombie tricks, combat phase, post-game, and then back to the next hand. So this was awesome. It communicated to the player what was happening, and also it gave us hooks for the music to hang our switches, basically switching from one kind of music to the next. And we decided to use that as the music structural driver for the game. So, with that, what are some music considerations when you have some kind of structural driver in the game like that? Well, first of all, the melodies per hero are indeterminate lengths, can be interrupted at any time based on the different gameplay. So that's going to be tricky. And I knew at that point that transitions would really be coming into play. And I didn't know what to do with them or how they would work or anything, but I knew that was going to be hard. And then I thought about, well, if we're going to go from one hero to another hero in a hand, what could make that hold together? And I thought, well, let's have common key centers per hand. So say you're in hand 1, whether you're a plant or a zombie, you're in the key of G minor. Jump to hand 4, both of them are in the hand of C minor. So common key centers per hand. Also, I decided that at that time that I would set a common tempo of 125 BPM for the whole game. And I just set it and kept it there, and it kept everything tight and feeling together, and I'm glad I did that. So these are choices and things that I was thinking about what to change, what not to change. Also in the hands, I thought about the drums and the progression of the drums. So in the early hands, you have light hand percussion, kind of mysterious hands, and then as you go to the later hands, you get the drum kit. So whether you're plant or zombie, you have the same kind of percussion, so that carries the glue between them as well. Of course, there needs to be differentiators, and I will talk about those. So there's the plant faction and the zombie faction, and they're much like teams, right? So I'm on the plant team or I'm on the zombie team. How should that sound? And we're dealing with instrument sets in terms of how should they sound, not colors of uniforms, but instruments. So I decided that there would be a common set of instruments between the plants and the zombies, and that was mallets. Mallets are used all over the place. The walking bass line, pits, of course, is used all over the place as well throughout all heroes. There are a couple strings that are used also, and a couple of other instruments that are the shared common set. But then you go into the perfection set, and for the plants, I decided they should be woodwinds. So woodwinds are the identifier for the plant faction. And within that, let's say you are a hero and you've selected your hero. There are also will be 1 or 2 unique instruments per that hero. So every time you hear that hero, you go, ah, that's my guy or that's my gal. Like Spadao, for example. He's a funny, weird hero, and he has bassoon. And so that, of course, reflects his personalities. I should say that those choices of instruments came along as the personalities of the heroes came into being. So, you know, Spadao being really weird, bassoon seemed a natural. So as the art came into place, I would choose different instruments per hero. So zombies, how should they sound? We had the common instrument set, as I mentioned, and then we had the perfection instrument set. And so for zombies, I chose trombones and lower brass, because they're a little heavier, and that seemed to fit very well with their art and their style. And then, of course, there's the unique instrument set per hero. So as those heroes came into play, for example, like Rustbolt, who was really angular and weird, he got the 8-bit keys, and Gargantuar, who's big, but he has a little guy up there, he's got the tuba and the Harman muted trumpets. So these kinds of instrument choices reflect their own quirk. So, you know, I'm going along and playing with these different instruments and exploring, and along comes a marketing trailer. And most of the time, marketing is over here, right? And development's over here. And they're quite disparate. And we're all kind of used to that. And that was still the case right at this moment, I should say. The creative franchise director and head of marketing came and said, hey, here we've got this great, you know, marketing trailer to announce the game. And the franchise director's like, hey, can you make it like The Incredibles? I'm like, sure I can. Okay. So I go out and I buy The Incredibles, and I go out and buy The Incredibles soundtracks, and I think any composer in the room, if somebody says, hey, can you do it like this? You go out and you get that music, and you study it, and you breathe it, and you live it. You try to become it, so you can kind of understand the style. And I did that, and then spent a couple of weeks working with the franchise creative director on the trailer, and we came to a really nice piece, a 2.5-minute trailer with that style. And we were going to do a live recording, which is awesome. So it's Monday, and I had told Panther Modern that I would be handing him the music or the sessions the next day to prepare for our session at Bastille on Friday. But that Monday night, our head of marketing and franchise director played it for EA's VP of marketing. And he's like, oh, okay, that's great, but what if it's a little more Batman-y? You know, like 1960s, but kind of the 1980s remake. So they brought me in on Monday around 7 o'clock, and they said, well, what do you think of this? And I listened to it, and man, I had to agree. It was really awesome. It was so good. And, you know, I had to quickly let go of the 2 weeks of work that I had done and the idea of how it was going to go. And our head of marketing said, so what do you think? Yes, good. Can I have till tomorrow morning and I'll try to do that? And he said, oh, sure. And meanwhile, I'm like, oh my God, I've got Stan lined up. We're going to record on Friday. But I just worked that night and tried to write in that style and came up with something pretty good by the next morning. And they came in and like, oh yeah, that's great. So I wrote it all out. We still recorded on Friday, and then we brought in a drum kit and bass and made it this kind of 60s spy genre type thing. And it worked out really well. And I'm really grateful for this marketing trailer because it was this watershed moment for part of the style of the music of the game. And also a big trust was established with the team. And from that point forward, I feel like smooth sailing for me. So I was really grateful. And another thing that I want to mention here is, as I said, normally marketing's over here and development's over here, but the marketing trailer actually really impacted the sound of the game, and I took that style of the trailer and put it into the combat fight sections. So I played that for you. Oh, sorry. Duh. And a PowerPoint problem. Sorry. I want to play it for you. Thanks! Damien's here, yeah! Anyway, I still enjoy this trailer. I listen to it, it makes me happy. But yes, I took part of that trailer and put it into the combat fight sections right after this trailer happened, and we lived with that in that section of the game internally for quite some time. So we go into what I call the content phase of the game, where both Luca Fusi, lead sound designer, you're there you are, yay. He and I were working pretty much in tandem at this point. We'd have like a hero on the board, and we'd both be working alongside each other and kind of laughing about the weirdness of the characters, and he'd be making the weird voices, and it all just came together really in a very fun and playful way. Like I said, you know, Spadow and his bassoon and his weird voice, and then Rustbolt and his 8-bit keyboards. Yeah, it was just a great and happy content phase, I should say. So it took me about 1 week to compose for these heroes, and it was 8 hands, and I would write the set for that hero, and then I would bring it into Wise to integrate. Also during this time, I should say, you know, calculating it out, I realized that 20 sets would be 2 hours of music, so reduced it to 10 sets and started thinking about a little bit of sharing with some of the heroes, and it did work out for size on mobile and also for time in terms of production. So now I'm going to go into Wise, show you a little bit of the integration. So here's Wise. Wanted to show you a bit of Wise because in here I'd like to show you how the hands were laid out, a bit of the progression from hand 1 to hand 8. Also, I'd like to show you some of the transition work between the zombies and the plants and how that was done. And so I'm going to show you through a little bit of that. So here we are, interactive music hierarchy, and we go into the hand counter. You know, these are the hands, like the phase indicator would indicate next hand, next hand. And we did set it up with the 8 hands, as Devin Lowe, our creative director, told us it would be on average. So here is hand 1. And as you open up the container for hand 1, you see there's a bucket there for plants, and then for zombies. And then surprise zombies are zombie tricks. We called them eventually. They were called surprise zombies for a while. Some transitions that I sometimes used. Combat fight section here, and a post-combat that became important eventually as well. And those are all things on the phase indicator for the most part. So let's just open up the plants and the zombies. All right, so here we have Super Brains. Got some hand percussion. The early hands are more mysterious. You hear, of course, a lot of mallets, instruments as well. And now when we go to Penelope, who is also known as Green Shadow in the game. Here's her hand 1. Also mallets, that's like glue, the mallets. You hear the bass in both. Some flute in her. Again, these early hands are very contemplative. Okay, so that would be some of the hand one. I want to play you a little bit of the zombie tricks. This is what would interrupt, right here, would interrupt the plant. It's a tense moment. What's happening? What's happening? And then that would be interrupted by combat. Always starting with the riff. Etc. So that is the combat. I wanted to say a quick note here. This score is a hybrid score. It's a mix between MIDI and wave. And I'd always thought it would be a hybrid score, and it did indeed develop into being a hybrid score. And there are some challenges that come up along the way about that, but I'm pretty pleased with how they live side by side and how they all sound together. The last part of that sequence, really, is the post-combat. This just at the end of the combat plays until the next hand, and then you go into the next hand. All right, so that's a bit of how the sequence of cues goes, and then we want to look at transitions. Now, we have our transitions up here on this higher level switch container. We did experiment with having our transitions in lower levels, and that got really complicated, and eventually found that there's actually consistency between them, and we're able to control it from a higher level. Of course, when you have some rules established on the higher level, then it trickles down to everything below. So here we are on this level, and we set our transitions here in this tab. I'm going to go to, that's not the level, it's actually at this level. Here we go. All right. And whenever you're playing as a zombie, now you always play zombies first, and they're always interrupted by plants. So after through a lot of experimentation with, this is the hardest one actually, in the game, I realized that it had to be custom cue transition from zombies to plants. I tried immediate, I tried next bar, I tried all sorts of things with this one in particular, but it didn't feel right musically in the game to have it any other than the custom cue, and I'll show you how those work. So that was what zombies to plants were. Let me show you in the cue now how that looks. Over here in Superbrains, and let's look at that for a second. Okay, so you see down here, these white markers are custom cues. That means if you play from here, and you get a call for the plant, it's interrupt, it'll change out at that white marker or that white marker. Now there are white markers, custom cues on all of these. So at any time, if it's called here, it'll go out at that white marker. And here as well. I'll show you some of those where later in the hands because they get a little more complicated. In any case, custom cues were the transition points established from zombies to plants. Now, plants, let's go back up here to our transitions. Plants they get interrupted by the tricks, zombie tricks. And that is immediate, because if you tried to do it later, though it sounds better musically, it didn't feel responsive enough in the game. So again, you play the game, you see where you need immediate, where you can actually extend maybe to the bar or to the end of a phrase or to a custom cue. And this is something that you just have to play with and find what feels best for gameplay. Super important. And then, let's see, any to combat was next beat. Now this one, you wouldn't think necessarily, you might think combat needs to be immediate, but next beat felt just a touch better. So actually consistently, next beat works best for this transition. So that's where we set transitions. And they are slightly different per hand if we go down through the hands, but we set them right there on that hand one for the transitions in hand one. So now I'm going to go and play a little bit further in hand 4, just to show how it sort of develops. And Sounds a little more active. Now you're into the game a bit. Got hand percussion still here, but it's a little more energetic than the contemplative phase. And a little bit of green shadow. All right, so it feels you're now in the meat of the game. And now I'm going to play a little bit of hand 8 so we can see where it goes. It gets more intense. Okay. Boop, boop. Yeah. There we are, super brains. And then we have drum kit here. Sing along. Oh. Thank you, Damien. All right, and a little green shadow. I bet you know this one too. Also drum kit, gluing them together, as it were. All right, so you hear a progression from 1 to 8, as per our creative director's request, beginning, middle, end progression. And then you saw here the transitions and a bit of how the segments work. So with that, I'm going to go back to PowerPoint. Okay. So this content phase continues. Remember how I used the trailer music in the combat sections for trailer music from the marketing trailer in the combat sections? And now we've been living with that in the game for a little while, and so has the team. And how is that working? Well, not super great, actually, because it was like too stingery. Ba-da-ba-dow, ba-da-ba-dow. And it was a bit jarring and irritating. It was the right style, but it wasn't quite the right thing. So decided to go in for a second recording session, which fortunately was approved, the budget, and which is a blessing. And I wrote 8 specific combat cues, which are slightly more melodic, but still completely in that same style. Also for this second recording session, these things called comics or narratives were coming on board, and each hero would get an introductory comic. And it would be, hi, I'm the hero, and then it would have these panels, comic panels, panel 1, panel 2, panel 3. And then they also had 3 more comics, adventure or story comics. Also, again, panel 1, panel 2, panel 3. So I talked to the art director and I said, well, let's see, if we had 4 comics per hero, 4 times 20 is 80, that is a lot of music, right? That's really too much for this game, and so I thought we need to develop a system here. If we can set some consistency within the panels, we can have a bucket of a mix and match type thing. So it's 4 seconds per each panel, 1, 2, or 3, and now you can pull from panel 1 bucket for any time, which didn't matter which comic, and it'll pull from these different buckets. So it was good to work that out, and we recorded that in our second session, and this is how it sounded. So anytime a comic comes in, it'll pull and sound different, but they all work really well together. So along comes the MIDI phase. I like this part of the story. So Guy Whitmore had decided, this is a great PopCap enterprise project that we should record our own sample library for our games, for mobile games. And He and I worked together to decide which instruments we should record based on the projects that were in production at the time, and also looking out to the future, what would be good ones to have in general. So we came up with a list of 24 instruments. I always knew this was in the plan. It didn't happen, it happened midway through production for Heroes. I had already finished 7 Heroes by this time, writing for East-West Libraries. But we were undergoing this sample library exercise and knowing that we'd be moving over to those samples eventually. And you may ask, why? But mobile, we're always thinking about size and ways to be smart. And this is a really smart way to do it. And also no licensing fees by having a sample library that you pull from within the game. So we went to Studio X and we recorded these 24 instruments, 3 different articulations, 3 different dynamics per instrument. And then Guy hired Panther Modern and his team of specialists, which maybe there's some in the room today. There are many people who helped us in terms of editing all of these materials and creating these mirrored sets, a mirrored set for contact and for Wise. So you write in your DAW with your contact set, and then you bring it over to Wise, and it's pretty darn close set. So it worked beautifully, and they did a great job, so thank you so much. So some of our instruments here, alto flute, saxophone. This is just our list of instruments that I used, mostly. Then I brought them over to Logic, and I'll talk about that. Hired Panther Modern to help with the MIDI arrangements because I was going to take the 7 sets I already had and move them over to the PopCap sample library. So I asked him if he could help with that, and also asked him about MIDI exporting, because Pro Tools didn't seem very good at MIDI exporting. So he said, yeah, Logic is way better. So I decided, well, okay, then I will learn Logic. And I think at PopCap, no one's too shy to learn a new DAW in the middle of everything. And I thank you all for being so brave. Because I'm like, okay, I can do this too. So I decided I'll learn Logic. And what was great about that is, you probably all know this, but if there's such a great community around Logic, you go onto YouTube, you ask any question, and there is a tutorial video. And I basically got up and running very quickly, 1 or 2 weeks, and I felt like I was, fluid. And if I had any questions, I'd just go to YouTube, hello. And all you gracious people who've shared information really helped me. So I was able to get up and running quickly. And I want to say, I am not a Pro Tools hater. I still do like it for multiple movies. I think it's a great tool, but I do think it's good to choose the right tool for the job. And Logic was the best for MIDI, and I still also use Pro Tools. So I had given Green Shadow as the first one to Stan Lepard to do the MIDI arrangements and to the PopCap samples. He came into PopCap, and we sat down, and we listened to it. And it did not sound the same. I'd been writing to the East-West libraries primarily, and that are beautiful, and different. And our PopCap sample library is fantastic too, but it's totally different. So the sounds were not the same. And the music, even though they were the same cues, it just felt wrong, and I had a day of depression. But I pulled right out. And I learned at that moment that a French horn from one sample library is not the same as a French horn necessarily to the other, or the mallets, or several instruments in this case weren't matches. And so I think it's very important, if you can, to write to the sample library that you'll be using ultimately at the end. Try to start there if you can. It took a lot of time and effort to get to a place where I was comfortable with this sample library. Of course, a couple weeks with Green Shadow, and then I was fully comfortable with it. But we had to learn techniques. So we did. We sat down for a couple of weeks, and we learned that layering helped, layering different kinds of instruments, switching out, reorchestration in some cases, velocity changes, actually duration changes, and the mallets were really key. It took, as I said, about 2 weeks on that. And then after we learned some of these tricks, it went faster per each hero after that. And this is some of the layering that was done. I leaned a lot on the French horns in East-West, and then for PopCap, I leaned more on the trombones. And then did more layering with vibes. This is how it sounds for Superbrain's MIDI. Zombie tricks. All right. So I think it turned out really well. And eventually, after getting them all into MIDI and into the game, I totally forgot what it sounded like before. I love it. And I actually think it fits way better with the aesthetic, and I love it. I just grew to totally love MIDI, and I'll tell you more why later. So I want to talk a little bit about size. We are a mobile studio, and we have to be very mindful of our size because of the devices that we are played on. And about midway through, we went through an exercise and established what our size would be. And we sort of claimed 80 megs. 40 for music, 40 for sound effects and VO. Luca made a beautiful pie chart. We met with the TD, we showed it to the executive producer, and they said, fine, okay. Now, at that time, we were still kind of in this Hearthstone era. That's sort of a big game. But now, at this point, we're in late production. I want to switch to late production. And along came Clash Royale. And that was a quick game. It loaded quickly, and everybody was loving it. And we had some pressure to come down to 30 megabytes. Right, we got an email over the weekend, and we're like, oh, yeah, you're too big. You need to be 30 megabytes. No. I think we all broke out in rashes at that moment. Yeah. The executive producer came by our meeting, fortunately, that day, and he said, hey, just, okay, you know, just see what you can do. So we saw what we could do. And we held to 60 megabytes. And with our wise wizard, Damien Kaspauer right here, he pulled all the levers and wise to make it work and to go down to 60 and make it sound awesome. He used over 21 different compression settings for the different sound types, really massaging it and crafting it. We switched some things from stereo to mono, but not everything. We streamed all the wave music, and we streamed larger wave assets, like hero assets. We also reduced the instrument ranges for the instrument sets. So in some cases, if there's a higher range that's not needed, I could just stretch out the note or just remove that. So I just went in and kind of did some pruning, and that worked out well. Also reduced the variation on the stingers or the block sounds, bow, bow, in the game. And we got down to 60, and it sounds great. And that's where we stayed. So, now, music, the late phase. We'd been playing the game now for quite some time. The music has been in the game, and it hasn't changed too much for several months. How's it working? How's it not working? Luke had been playing it a lot, and he's like, well, he was saying that like in hand 8, because his games were longer than 5 minutes. So some real world stuff, real world info is coming in now. You know, these are, sometimes they're shorter than 5 minutes, but sometimes it's an 8-minute game. And how's that working? It wasn't responding quite as much as we wanted it to, as I wanted it to. You remember, I wanted it to really be connected to the gameplay experience and responsive, and for it to give emotional feedback to the player. So, how could we make it more responsive? MIDI was going to become our friend. Now, one thing I thought was, well, when you get further in the game and you're up by a certain amount, you want to feel good. You want to feel lifted. You know. Remember Barry Manilow, how he did that? He transposed. Okay, and it worked. So not all of you remember Barry Manilow, and I realize that. Anyway, he did transposition. I'm like, oh, yeah, we should try that. So Damien and I sat down together and figured out, Damien was like, oh, could we do this with MIDI? And so he created an RTPC for players' relative health in Wise. And with MIDI, what we were able to do was if you're up by 5 points, all the MIDI music went up a whole step. And if you're up by 10 points, all the MIDI music went up 2 whole steps. And it worked. It was awesome. That's why we love MIDI. It really was flexible. It was something that you can really work with. And at that point, the waves were starting to become an issue because, remember, this is a hybrid score. And the superblock waves, ba-pow, would actually happen over the sections where there's MIDI music. And if you transpose your MIDI and you don't transpose those brass stingers, it does not sound good. So they were feeling kind of like clunky, the waves, like pulling us down. And we utilized the same RTPC, but used playback speed for the waves. And we're able to get that working, but it was really not as easy to do, but it did get sounding great. Then we utilized the same health parameter, same point spread, and added an overlay track to the plants when they're not doing well, and the zombies when they're not doing well. For the plants, I used a bass clarinet pattern, and the zombies, I used a trombone pattern, and so the same RTPC would call that for a negative when you're down by 10. A different health parameter that we used when the player was not doing well was we utilized parameters to drive switches. And by that, I added a horizontal music layer, an overlay track, and it switched to a low health subtrack to a cello, ostinato, and bass pizz part. So whether you are a zombie or a plant, it's the same. You're down to your last 5 and you're not doing well. Yeah, you kind of got that Jaws type thing happening. We also, at this phase, because we're kind of like, how can we get this more responsive? Luca had been thinking about those kinds of ideas way early on, and he had this EKG, that we called it, game parameter, which was a combination of many different things of how the player was feeling. So a combination of like many different things I cannot explain right now. But basically, if you follow that parameter, it would be an intensity change. And so we thought, oh, we'll try that with Spadao and Cyborg on some drums. Let's try it on some drums. So we added some subtracks and layers with drums, and it was working in the game, and we could hear it. But the material itself, the drum tracks, it was live drums that I'd recorded at Bastille. I never recorded really very much variation at all, never any variation in intensity. So there wasn't much feeling difference. And I think I'd love to come back to this someday with different drums and put in more intense drums to have that match and follow, because I think it's a great feature, but we decided it's not actually, you actually don't feel the lift because the material wasn't there. So we tried, and it was awesome, and we decided to not use it for now. So other late music changes were in the combat section. Remember, I wrote those phrases, we recorded them in our second session, and they would get interrupted at the next beat in the game. But it sounded a little weird to me early on in the game, or if there weren't many sidekicks on board during the combat sections. So we decided, oh, I could probably edit those combat phrases into a short and a long. So we utilized a game parameter based on how many cards are on board, on the deck, in the combat area, and if there are 3 or less, I believe, then it goes to a short combat, and if there are 3 or more, then it goes to a long combat. So we changed that as well, and now it's more responsive. So all these changes, a little more responsive. And now I'm going to play for you a little bit of how the transpositions sound. Right now, 16 for Solar Flare versus 15 Morticia. So, no transposition. But now, she's up by 7. Transposition. All right. So that's how that sounded in the game. So I just want to recap a little bit. The guiding principles that we set early on to be for the game player, the player's experience, always coming back to that as our guiding principle, allowed for changes to happen along the way. And for our phases, I would say from the prototype to content, MIDI, late phase even, where you think you might be done. No, you're not done. You can re-look at it. You can reassess it. You can say, can this be better? And utilizing your tools and an open mind and a flexible mind and flexible team, I should say as well, you can make these changes all the way along through the process. So, speaking of a team, it does take a village, and a very fine one indeed. So I want to thank everybody on PVZ Heroes team. Luca Fusi, lead sound designer extraordinaire, thank you. Technical sound designers RJ Mattingly, Damien Kaspauer, interactive mixer Damien Kaspauer, and Wizard of Wise, as we all know you to be. Panther Modern, MIDI and orchestra arranger, music mixer, Corey Kruckenberg for all those trailers and the brass. It sounded so good at Bastille. Our additional sound designers, sound rangers, Formosa, RJ and Jacqueline, and of course, our studio audio director, Guy, for trusting this project to me. I am so grateful for having this opportunity because I loved these last 2 years on this project so much. It's been the best of my whole career. And then thank you very much for your time today. I'm ready to take some questions if you have any. And for the first 11 people, I think, that ask questions, you get a mushroom. So don't be shy. Thank you.
So, thank you. Wow.
Oh.
A little short. I kind of went through the same thing as you. I was tasked with a mobile game and went to listen to what was out there. And this was the first game I listened to and realized I was out of my league. So, so kudos to you and the PopCap team.
Oh,
my question is, why when you realized that like the stingers weren't working as real-time music, did you not just convert everything, or pre-recorded music, did you not just go all MIDI all the time?
Yeah, I guess I could have done the stingers as samples. That is possible. But I really like the live brass. And I didn't want to use the PopCap sample library brass because the stingers had these great bends to them. Bow, ba-dow. Their articulations, you only get that in live. And so for brass, I decided that just had to be the live waves. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Oh, I'm sorry, Masha, if I hit you. Oh, that was a good one.
So I was wondering about the transposition with using the WAV files. Did you have to change the tempo at all, or were all the WAV files such short phrases that they didn't change tempo when you transposed them?
Oh, okay. So the only waves that transposed were the block stingers. Bow, ba-dow, and when we did that pitch thing, they of course sped up just a little bit, but that was fine because they were not time-based anyway. They were just kind of attacks. The combat phrases, the fight music, that did not transpose. And I'm like, oh, how will that sound? But it did sound fine, in my opinion, to transpose up and then combat section to stay where it was. So we did not transpose the combat section.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. I believe they sort of asked the questions that I was about to ask, but now I have the mushroom, so
Yeah.
I might as well
So, yeah,
just
you can
leave.
just vamp.
No, okay. But no, I actually did have a question. So what, I guess it was related to the key that you chose to have things in. How did the different kind of gameplay keys work together? You have sort of each character has their own theme and motif in the right key. I maybe just touch on that a bit.
Sure. Yeah, each character has their own motif. And in each hand, I set common key centers. So hand 1 through hand 3 is all G minor. And then at hand 4, they all switch to C minor. And then hand 5, I started getting a little more crazy. And I did C and D minor. So it could be in C and D. And then 7 and 8, it was C, D, and G. And they're all, complementary. So it was fine to switch between those keys.
Okay, thank you.
I kind of stayed safe, I think. Yeah.
I'll pass on the mushroom. I've already got one.
Are you sure you don't want a double?
No, give it to somebody
A
else.
little friend?
Give it to somebody else.
Okay.
I'm curious about your decision, because you guys are always pushing the envelope, which I love. But I was curious that, you were talking about these late changes, etc., which, knowing the way you guys do things, were probably fairly, you're going to be changing up until almost the minute it was done. So I'm kind of curious on why there was the decision to do the live recording, what seemed to be sort of earlier on in the process, because then you've, like as you even sort of said it yourself, it's kind of like, oh, we can't do anything with that. So whilst obviously the live recordings give you a really awesome sound, wouldn't it have been sort of more flexible to do a semi-okay version of that in samples, which you could then leave the recording to the end, and then if you've changed things, it sort of, so what was the benefit of doing the live recording? What was the decision on that one?
Oh, well, I think because of the marketing trailer. The marketing trailer came quite early, and they had budget for live recording for it, and
so you took advantage of that?
Took advantage of that.
Right.
And then in editing and chopping that up, and the beautiful brass sound that it brought to the game, and putting that into the game, I'm like, I kind of fell in love with that brass.
No,
Yeah.
thank you. That makes complete sense, because I do exactly the same thing. It's like, well, I'm not going to waste this. But,
Right.
but look, through your talk, it's like, but that would have been really much better to do at the end. But of course, you didn't have that choice.
Well, and that's kind of like how things go. You don't know
Yeah.
always where things will happen, and you flex and you follow.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
Hi.
We're getting good at this. Yes.
Sweet. So always be recording, always be composing, always be mixing, all of this. You had someone come into your office and basically say, cut out half of this. Was there any concession that you had to make in the composing? Was there anything you had to change? Or was Damien just that good and made it work?
He was that good.
For real?
Yeah,
Like,
we did not.
Wow.
Well, no, we took out variations. Our concessions were in variations, and with the sound effects and the music. So some concessions, but never really a large amount of content was changed. I think we really held to it because we believed in how it was all working together, and because Damien is so good with Wise and knows the tools and how to really get it working. I think that's why we're able to not really have to change the content.
cool. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
I think if we didn't have Damien, we might have had to.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Hello, thank you for your talk.
You're welcome. Sorry about that. It's like a ground ball.
I was just curious, for your live recordings, what were some microphone configurations that you used?
I don't remember. We went to Bastille and, okay. So we're in Bastille and we had an 18-piece brass group. It's a giant church. And I think they had many different sets of mics. I don't remember exactly on the brass, but I do really remember the drums. They built out a little room in the middle of the stage, a little drum room, to record the drum kit in that space so it wouldn't just be such a wash. And so that was fantastic. And then we recorded the bass inside the studio, and the brass, we took advantage of that beautiful space. And so I can't remember exactly all their miking technique that they used for that, but
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, standard kind of, close, near, far.
Thank you for the talk.
Oh, yeah.
Come on.
Whoa! Masha duck. Yeah!
Thank you. So, I'm just curious about the MIDI sample library.
Yes.
And you said you made 24 instruments. Sounds really good, but I want to know about more. And how many variations in each instrument you have?
Oh, yeah. We did 3 different articulations and 3 different dynamic ranges. So usually a soft, medium, a loud, and depending on the instrument, what kind of articulations. So that was about pretty much what we did for each, sometimes 4 articulations. And then we went and chose which ones we wanted and needed for our games and further culled that down. But now we have all of that for the future. Huh? Each note. Bap.
Each note.
Oh, imagine Guy and I sitting for 2 weeks. Bap, bap, bap. Oh, no, that last one was pitchy. Bap. That was our reality. Total zen.
So 3 articulations, 3 dynamic range, and are each for each tone?
For each pitch.
Each pitch?
Each pitch,
That's
yeah.
great.
And it did take about 2 weeks. It took exactly 2 weeks to do 24
It's fantastic
instruments.
job. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi. Thanks for the talk.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to ask a question, obviously. So it sounded like you composed, or maybe you just arranged in Logic, and then exported MIDI, and were playing a similar or the same samples back in Wise. I just was wondering if you could talk a little bit about any mixing that had to be done in Wise, or I'm assuming you're applying your ambience, your reverb in Wise, and what was that like to did that help sell the transitions to have
Absolutely. Yeah, we
Okay.
had the same kind of reverb in Wise, and we used that as a glue between everything. And I think that's important because it makes everything feel like it's coming from this same space. So yes, we did.
Yeah, I wonder if you could do that even with waves, or if you just didn't mix it with reverb and then you applied it.
We had a
Wise.
little bit of reverb on the waves, but we also utilized the same reverb within Wise. I don't think we brought anything in too wet because we knew that we would be
Okay.
utilizing the reverb within Wise.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I think we have probably time for 2 more questions, and then our time is up.
Thank
And-
you.
oh, this is perfect.
Hi.
Hi.
I had a question. I just changed my mind, though. The first question was about musical genre. Did you go back and look specifically at certain references, styles, composers, or was it just come out of your experience? But I was wondering about the MIDI controllers, just based on that last question. Were you using expression control and things in Wise
Oh,
for expression?
not really much, no.
Okay.
I didn't really use much of that in Wise. It
Okay.
turned out I've been using the pitch bend lately.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and it's fun. But you can. I bet you can if you want to, and it's flexible enough to do that. The MIDI system in Wise has a little ways to go. Definitely, there's no editing in there. So if you wanted to even change any kind of velocity at all, you
go
have to go
back.
back to your DAW and then bring
Sure.
it back in. But still love it.
Thank you.
Okay, last question. And before I forget, everybody please fill in your surveys. Ooh, and mention how great the mushrooms are. Okay.
Thank you. First of all, this is a great. sorry. This is a great talk. You're a brilliant mind. I really are.
Thanks.
My question is kind of when you talked about when you had to reduce the size.
Yeah.
When you mentioned different techniques like kind of carving and compression and things like that, was it a matter of reducing the data in the actual file and the playback? Because was that the result of all the changes you made and reducing it from like 80 to 60? Was that the result of it? What is it? You
It's
understand?
more about, well, we did a lot of compressions.
Right.
Compression, so if that's what you mean, yeah, we did a lot of that. And then we did some,
But I mean, maybe let me clarify.
clarify.
Like the net cut that you achieved.
yeah.
How would you summarize what the achievement you got with all the changes you made? Was that a reduction in kind of like the size of the print of the file, or what was the actual result, the cumulative result of all the processes?
60 megabyte memory footprint on device was the result of all of the different wizardry that Damien did in Wise.
Okay.
Yeah, so we had 80, and then we went to 60. And then we did have a lot of things that are streaming. So basically, it became smaller and helpful to the game, because when, especially on mobile, they want download to be quick. And also for the footprint on the phone to not be too large, because people will just remove it. Yeah, that's probably true.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time.